Hi and welcome to my Vision of Teaching reflective video. Today I'm going to take you on a short journey of my time at the Faculty of Education from my first semester and now to my fourth. I started off at the faculty finding myself in my first foundations course. They asked us a question about why we wanted to be teachers and of our vision, and my immediate response was to impact my students and make them want to be the best versions of themselves. And for some reason, I thought this was such a simple task. However, over the past 4 semesters, I have learned that a lot goes into becoming a teacher, including a lot of planning, reflecting, and revamping. I want to read you my response to some questions that were posed in the first week of our last semester. So, one of the questions was, how have you changed from 1 year ago personally and professionally? And my response to this was that 1 year ago, I started this journey with what I thought was a pretty concrete idea of where and how I wanted this career to go. However, in this 1 year, I've had so much experience and knowledge brought forth to me that I have completely changed the path of my career, and I feel like a totally different person. With this, I want to talk a little bit more about the challenges that I faced. So, a major challenge for me from the first semester to this semester was recognizing myself and my needs and wants. Sometimes you get so caught up in doing assignments and making sure that your students are happy and learning that you forget to take care of yourself. And I find that that's a really important thing that I've also learned this semester. And in terms of trying to help my students uh, be ready for the real world, for university or college, that was the second question posed. And I think one of the biggest challenges that they might face from my own experience is a social and personal challenge. I feel like learning and getting new knowledge based on curricula is not as hard as it is to adjust, trying to fit into a new environment with new people, and also um, an ever changing image of our body, of our physical state. And I think that what I would do as a teacher to help support my students is to get to know them. And that is one of the really big things that was pushed in this faculty to get to know our students from day one. And I have done that in most of all my placements where I asked students to complete student profiles, did icebreaker games, and I also promoted school clubs, such as the science club. And I feel that this is one of the hardest things for both teachers and students to adjust to such a new system. And it's been a challenge for me as well. That all of this, all the assignments, all the effort and time that needs to go into planning has really been a challenge. And then going into our second week of foundations, we discussed um, a renewed vision of education, and how that puts the student at the pinnacle of our education, and where we're teaching them some 21st century skills such as communication and collaboration and critical thinking, as well as using technology for as technology is one of the driving forces in the real world. And to me, achieving excellence is putting our students first, whether it's planning a lesson or planning a curriculum or delivering or assessing. Students need to be the first things that we think of whenever we're planning or reflecting. In the third week, we got to talk about the Learning for All. So that basically talked about how we have to include all of the students, all of the teachers in our planning, and And the big words that come from this Learning for All document are UDL, Universal Design for Learning, and DI, Differentiating Instructions. And I feel that both of these aspects enable educators to respond to students' needs and strengths effectively, and it helps to deliver the content in a more proactive way. And in the fourth week of Foundations class, we talked about Indigenous education, which is really, really critical in our classrooms as more and more Indigenous students are in our classrooms. So in the fourth week, they asked us to pose some questions or concerns that we have as new teachers. And here are some of the questions or concerns that I have. One of them is, why do people say to First Nations people, FNMI people, to get over it? I think that they can't just get over something like that, because those are really real memories and they have been through trauma. And another question that I had was, if they're not identified as Aboriginal, how do we teach them about it? How do we incorporate it? Thirdly, when teaching about Aboriginal or Indigenous education, how can we be more respectful? Sometimes it's so hard and we have to be more cautious about what we know and the misconceptions or assumptions that we might have, and that we need to address those. Lastly, how might you go about resolving your questions or concerns? Well, I find that professional development seminars such as lunch and learns are really critical, and getting involved in the Indigenous community, such as attending powwows or some of their ceremonies, could also be very beneficial. And looking at resources such as the scope and sequence document is very important as well. And in my last semester, I got to take an elective course. One of the elective courses was environmental education, and I was quickly drawn to it. And I got to learn so many new things in environmental education. We went outside a lot. We saw how being in nature and being connected to nature can be such an impactful thing on education. We also learned about the 7 grandfather teachings, as well as Indigenous people are very connected to nature. And I learned that as a future teacher, I would definitely want to take my classroom outdoors sometimes so that the students can renew and reconnect to the environment around them. For instance, this was a trip that we took to a high school where there was an environmental council, and the students were super involved in their community, not just within the school but outside of the school. They revamped a whole new community park, and that was really, really motivating. So, in all, I find that my vision of teaching has really developed and evolved since the first semester, and I look forward to starting my career as a new teacher, and I look forward to what that means for me.